Hi, everyone, and welcome to Rituals of Strength. I'm your host, Kevin Secours, and this week it's a very special week because I have I would say proof that the internet is a great thing because there's two gentlemen that I have on the show at the same time this week who I would not have met were it not for the internet. I've not yet had the fortune of meeting them in person, but they become good internet friends, and I've been interviewed by and alongside these two guys. First off is Sifu Russ Smith, and second is my good friend. Can I also call you Sifu, or do you go by Coach?
I like coach. I coach. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Coach Randel Davis. Russ and Randel, how are you guys doing today?
Awesome. All the
Amazing.
better for being here. Thank you for having us.
Man, what
Yeah.
would we have done without internet? Would we have met on some train and outside Mumbai and started a letter writing campaign, or what was it like in the pre-internet days, man? So
Yeah.
let's get a little bit of bio, and please don't be shy. Russ, I'll start with you. Can you give the listeners a little idea of who you are?
Sure, yeah. I'm just a guy who loves martial arts. I've been doing it for I'm very close to 40 years now, so I'm getting a little long in the tooth. Hair's gone mostly gray. The eyebrows will be next year, I think. Um, been practicing Okinawan martial arts since the beginning, karate and Kobudo from Okinawa. Always been interested in studying the roots and the culture of these arts, so that's led me on a long journey of also looking into arts in southern China, which may or may not have influenced or been somewhat similarly developed alongside those Okinawan martial arts. So that's been a lot of fun. So for me, that includes five ancestor boxing, Wuzu Chuan, and then also some Hakka arts, including white eyebrow and dragon style. So a little bit of Tai Chi now that I'm getting older, try to help keep everything lubricated. But I love all the martial arts. I've cross-trained in a ton of things. I only mention the ones normally that I've got an instructor level certification. That way, I hopefully I can speak with some measure of intelligence on those things. But everything else I've just dabbled in.
Amazing. I have no idea what's involved in Five Ancestor Boxing, but that title applies perfectly to some of the weddings I've been to. But that would be five generational boxing. All right. And
Nice.
Mr. Randall, would you be able to give us a brief glimpse into your history?
Sure. As far as martial arts goes, I would actually count my high school wrestling coach. He was great, very methodical. I really believe that grappling can be hold its toe with the Asian martial arts or any other martial arts out there. So I did a couple years of high school wrestling and failed miserably at it, but I loved it and probably in the best shape of my life. And then from there in college, I really missed wrestling. And I was lucky enough that we also got to dabble in a little bit of Greco. And my coach was like, why don't you check out judo? And sure enough, there was a judo club at my college. And so I signed up for judo. And at the same time, Mesa had just started a Wing Chun club. The head of the math department, Ed Banan Hamada, had started a Wing Chun club through my current Sifu Mayor. And Sifu Mayor would come up on a week and dump like 2 or 3 years of material in our heads. And then off we would go. That same summer, I would drive over from Grand Lake, which is the western entrance to the Rocky Mountain National Park. I would come over Trail Ridge Pass, only open in the summer, to Longmont, which I reside at now. And I did 2 years, 2 summers of Pak Mei. And then I would dabble mainly in Southern arts. I really found a home at Southern arts. I think that's one reason why Russ and I are such good buds and we can pick each other's brains. So I continued on the Wing Chun journey. It's been 27 years this October, which is hard to believe. I'm knocking on 30 years where Russ is knocking on 40. And then about 13 years ago, almost 14 now, I was introduced to my co-host on the Kung Fu Conversations podcast, my instructor Owen Schilling and Xing Yi. So I've been doing Xing Yi for almost 14 years, which I like to refer to as Tai Chi's great, great angry Mohawk tattooed grandma, you know? So she's the punk rocker of the internal arts. And then 2 or 3 years ago, I've started with Bagua. I'm using it a little bit like a vitamin D pill. It's a supplemental art, but it helps. My day-to-day job is driving a city bus. And so I joke these days that I'm fighting not only my bus driver's waistline, but my lower back. I've got as many miles to driving a bus in the last 16 years as going to the moon and back. And so I fight a high stress job. And so Bagua gets deep into the tissues, deep into the joints. And I'm also an avid Indian club mace, kettlebell swinger. You and I talk about that quite a bit, coach. I love movement practice also, dance, anything to do with the human body and the expression of movement. I'm also a fan of.
Amazing. All right, so gentlemen, this is the idea. I really want to just throw out a whole bunch of random things. Some of them are musings and things I've been belaboring in my own mangled brain. Others are questions that just keep coming up again and again. And I just wanted to free associate and see what comes out, meeting of the minds, as it were. So the first thing I want to talk about is the idea of tensegrity. And tensegrity is it's an architectural term. It was created by Kenneth Snelson, but it was actually coined by his teacher. The actual term was coined by Buckminster Fuller. Sometimes it's referred to as floating compression. If you've ever seen any of these wacky constructions where things are kind of twisted and in this stasis field, but they're not actually touching one another. And often it's used in body work. Sometimes it's called biotensegrity, but it's really used to explain how a biological system can exist with tension in the muscles, structures in the bones, and what the relationship is. We might use Western words like elasticity. The explosive animal power of the internal arts is certainly a way of expressing it. So my thought was, I would like to know, because both of you have very interesting internal backgrounds, what kind of awareness to tensegrity or something relating to tensegrity would you say you have in your practice, and where does it rank? How do you perceive it?
Go ahead, Randall. Take this one
Can I
first. Yeah,
can I
please.
follow on this grenade? So
Go.
it's interesting because Russ and I actually talked about this yesterday before we hopped on air, and I got really lucky because my co-host and my Xingyi teacher Owen is also a certified Rolfing practitioner. And so Ida Rolf, the Rolfing Institute, is actually on one of my routes right now, the 205. And so about the same time, 13 years ago, when I started swinging the light Indian clubs, I found Dr. Thomas Myers and his work with anatomy trains. And that's somebody, if nobody's familiar with anatomy trains, go check out what Thomas Myers is doing. He's got an amazing YouTube page. And that's the same time I started Xingyi. And it's the same time I found Buckminster Fuller's models and these beautiful models with the sticks. Couldn't believe them. And you pull one and the whole sculpture either moves out or it comes in together. And I really started thinking about how that related to the Xingyi I was learning and also the Wing Chun that I also practice and teach. And so what I really believe is, and you said it best, coach, you said this dynamic system, right? So it's not just the lungs, it's not, just the bones, it's not just the circulatory system, but it's a whole dynamic system. And one of the systems that's really been studied a lot in the West, that's a new catchphrase in the Chinese martial arts, is the fascia. Everyone thinks the fascia does absolutely everything, with the explosive, if I'm doing Tai Chi, it's the Peng Jing energy. And I think it's just a part of the equation.
Mhm.
Now, I could talk about, all the different systems, but I think it might be best served if I tell you how I actually use it in my two arts and
Yeah.
what I think is happening. So one of the things we first work on in Wing Chun is stance and posture and structure. So if you look at Siam Tao, which is the first form in Wing Chun, it is the weirdest damn looking form in the world. You're standing in this pigeon-toed stance with your spine upright. Some lineages kip the hips or tuck the tailbone, and then the chin is tucked and that spine is elongated. And you're learning all this hand jive, this hand jargon. But I think too many people fall in love with the hand movement and they don't look at what's not moving. And that is the stance and that is the posture. And because you're pulling through the spine, not hard, just ounces of strength and tucking the chin correctly, that allows for a dynamic structure to be developed over time. And so I think one thing that I've noticed in other lineages of Wing Chun is they're too focused on the arm and they're not focused enough on the arm connecting to the body, which is, first the spine and then through the ground. And so you're trying to connect the ground path, if you will, to make a structure that is transgressive, right? So it's not stiff, it's not hard, but it does have shape. And that shape will give if it needs to. And it has the whole It has the nervous system attached to it. It has the joints, the tendons. Everything needs to be attached. So what we do is we start in isolation, right, with that Cunum towel. And then a lot of our drills are just in place, right across from a partner. And then we try to carry that structure. That's where the footwork comes in. That's where the entry drills come in. That's where that method happens in Wing Chun. I would dare say that even Chi Sao, which is a lot like the Tai Chi sticking hands, is a test of transgressity. I'm seeing where your structure is failing, and that is an opportunity for me to go in and strike. And so it's instead of actually a pissing contest, the Wing Chun Chi Sao should be probing for holes in your structure. And it's always constantly, how do I find those holes in the structure? Well, by touch. It's a tactile listening system, right? But I'm not only feeling their arms, even though we're connected at the arms, I want to be able to feel the bottom of their feet so they actually have a whole structure. Xingyi does something very similar, not so much as in the sticky hands. Like old Xingyi just goes in and for the blast, right? It doesn't really have a sticking hand process. Owens does, which is integrated through the Bagua, and I enjoy it quite a bit. But with Xingyi, I find it to be two extremes that I love. Yin and yang, if you will. I'm not too hip into the Chinese terminology. As a matter of fact, I'm so glad you talked about transgressity, coach, because I really believe that it's one of the few Western terms that explains a lot of the things that we're doing in the Chinese martial arts. I don't feel like I'm heretical or like a heretic at all by saying that I can also find Western models that can help me explain the Chinese systems. Because as a lot of people, I don't know if they know this, but I'm not Chinese. I'm not born in 1920s Hong Kong. I'm not practicing with Yip Man. So I have to be aware of these things and I have to be sensitive to these concepts. But with Xingyi, we have standing practice. Our main posture is Santi Shi or Santi Shi, and it's back weighted, and you'll hold this posture. Legendarily, you would stand there for 3 years. Not 3 years continuous, of course, but that would be the only thing that you would learn. And teacher would sprinkle on some new ideas and new concepts in that posture. But we do standing practice, and then we do dynamic movement with our forms, talu or kata, if you will. And what I love about the Xingyi forms, it's only 3 moves. God, what a beautiful thing! It's only 3 moves. You do these 3 moves on one side of your body, it brings the right side forward. You do the 3 on the right side of your body, you do the left side forward. You could go to the moon and back if you had oxygen and the stamina to do it. And so I think it takes these two extremes to build this transgressity model, right? It takes the static and it takes the dynamic movement practice. Now, something that I've worked with other Xingyi instructors. I'm actually working with a new instructor now, thanks to Owen's blessing. He's totally cool about that stuff. And something that they both use is they will sectionalize the body. And here's what I mean by that. They have a practice for the legs and the footwork. They have a practice for the trunk and the torso. And they have a hand method, which we call jibengong. But it's not just waving the hands in the air. You're trying to connect the arm motion to the torso, right? So you're coming at these extreme ends, legs, arms, trying to connect it to the torso. So you're sectionalizing these areas. And then when you do the kata or the form, that's when you try to integrate into this transgressity structure. And a lot of what we do, we joke in Xingyi, and I love this term, we try to throw our bones at you, is what we try to do in the Xingyi model. I'm trying to extend the bones. And there's a beautiful phrase that someone came up with. You know the bag of oranges that we get, gentlemen, in the orange plastic, and they've got the roping. They're like a good Xingyi punch should be take out most of the oranges, leave 4 or 5 at the bottom, so you have this bag which would represent the fascia, and you whip it around your head in a circle, and then instead of throwing it, you act like you're throwing it, but you hold onto the bag, and that bag is going to extend with the weight of the oranges. And that's the model that we're trying to do. Or if you're an old video gamer, not quite Dhalsim from Street Fighter 2, but something like that character. So, but I also think, again, too, I was talking about Chi Sao. I honestly think that that's what Tai Chi is trying to do in their push hands. They are feeling somebody's structure, They're getting a hold of that structure, and where there's a break in that structure, whether it be cognitively through the nervous system, whether it be something, mechanical, they've got a bad hip. You're able to feel that at the point of contact and capitalize and destroy their balance. And so, yeah, those are my bus driver practitioner concepts on the Transgressity model for my Chinese martial arts
What
team.
it's worth my first jujitsu sensei Lamada said exactly the same thing. He used to say, "Throw your bones like a battering ram." And that was always how I saw punching. Get rid of the, all gas, no break. Sifu Russ, what's your perspective on tensegrity?
Yeah, I would say, this is a relatively new concept to me applying it to martial arts. I've understood this from an engineering perspective in the past, but only recently started thinking about this from a martial arts perspective. But in chatting with Randel before and hearing more of his explanation, it seems to me we all have, or we are in the process of finding or developing these construct. Marcus Davila calls them constructs. I call them frameworks. Randall, you just call them models, right? So tensegrity, even if it's not a perfect one-for-one engineering analogy to the structure of the body, it can be a helpful set of frameworks so that you think about the body more holistically. You understand that like no training in isolation is actually going to be where you're going to want to stay. You're going to want to move past that to more holistic whole body movement, and both for building up good movement, but also for how you want to break down somebody else's good structure and crush it. So I love that you guys are talking about throwing the bones. I was thinking while you guys were talking about one thing that my Kobudo teacher talked about, and that was I interpreted what he said as stacking the bones, the idea of using the compressive structures of the bones by lining them up appropriately. If I'm going to block something with my elbow far away from my body, or if I could tuck my elbow in, point my forearm at my spine, rest my elbow against my ribs, and lift with the support of my body behind my wrist, then that's a compressive structure that lets me apply my structure to my force calculation, right? So I'm enlisting good structure in that way. Um, that doesn't speak to kind of the elastic properties of tensegrity, but it does speak to the compressive ones. But in general, like I would say, I'm not applying this concept yet to how I teach martial arts. The process is now started. Thank you for planting the seed, guys. It does already relate to a few things that I think about already, but I think that'll continue to expand. So I appreciate the opportunity to keep learning with you guys.
For me, I remember my first sensei was always saying, when you're in like a horse stance, you should have outward and inward pressure. And I was
Mm,
so
Mm,
Western that I would think outward and then I was going too far outward. So then I would think inward and my legs were literally doing this. And then I started doing Tai Chi after an injury and we were doing embracing the tree meditation, a lot of
yeah.
Qigong. And then I went to a weekend seminar with Mantak Chia. You guys know this
hmm
Iron
Of
Chi.
course.
Yeah.
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 He was saying spiral the energy around your legs. And this was like a thought bomb in my brain. I was like, fucking spiral, not in and out.
Yeah.
I was so stuck in
Yeah.
the duality. Then the spiraling. Then when I went back to my jujitsu, I felt it in my sword work. I felt the embracing the tree. So my
Nice.
follow-up question would be in your, and it doesn't have to be from a tensegro kind of perspective, but in your daily life, when you catch yourself slouching, you're driving the bus badly, whatever the case is, you're slouching at the desk. When you think about checking your posture, where does your brain go? What do you guys do?
Mine
Go
is
ahead.
first it's called ding or
Hmm.
pressed. And it's tuck the chin,
Yep.
elongate, and let everything below that pulled neck drop, drop away. So you've got 2 points. And then it's breathing,
Yeah.
posture and breathing.
Let me
Just
ask you a question. When I teach chin tucking, the way that it's always stuck is I always think if I'm talking continuously, I go to the point just before my voice changes. If I tuck so much that it compresses, it's no good. And then
yeah,
I'm going to pull it back and then I just let the mantle drop. That's how I
yeah.
kind of do
Nice.
it. Yeah. Russ,
It took me
oh, dude.
it can I show you something real
Yeah,
quick,
yeah, sure.
coach? It took me years to realize that this wasn't chin tucked. For some
Right.
reason in my brain, I always thought that the level jawbone was the tucked chin, but it's
Yeah.
actually tipped
Yeah.
upward. right,
Yeah.
and backwards. And so when I started realizing that, all these other like all the rest of everything that was below it started feeling correct. I'm like, oh God, my shoulders have been raised this
Yeah.
whole damn time. I couldn't drop them
Mm.
properly because I thought the tucked chin was a flat
Same.
chin.
I had the same. And then after I figured it out, I was rereading for the 100th time Musashi. And when he talks about, the chin is down, the hairline invigorated. So I called it the memory line because the hair's gone. Invigorate the back of the neck. And it was such a weird line, but the buttocks neither jutting nor, I think
Mm.
contracted. And it all made sense, as soon as the chin
Yes.
got corrected. Russ, what do you
That's awesome.
for postural correction?
Well, let me throw in one thing first. These are one of the reasons why I love some of the Chinese poetry, because there's sometimes you never know what's going to stick in your brain and help you the most, right? Just the way somebody says it doesn't have to be esoteric or Chinese. But in Southern Chinese martial arts, they say the head is like the thousand character. Just because the top stroke of the word 1000 has this little downward tilt, and the idea is that your forehead should tilt down just a little bit, and that helps you bring your chin down to protect your throat and
Mm,
set your cervical posture alignment. So for me, it's Chinji Tao is the reminder. It's head like a thousand character. Um, but those are just the weird little things that stick in my brain because I'm a little different. Um,
No,
for me, I have a lot of back problems. I have some genetics in my family that cause us to have a lot of back problems. For me, if people are watching this on video, I'm standing at a desk. I haven't sat at my desk for about 9 months now. I use 100% standing. Really helps me keep my posture good. I just can't trust myself to be seated for long. There's a lot of challenges I have with the strength and structural integrity of my back. So um, I just find that being very, very careful with my lower back, learning to pay attention to the things that my martial arts have taught me, which is like to keep the lower abdomen tense most of the time, even if everything else is very, very relaxed. These are things that help me a lot.
and the thing is, he's standing, but he's standing on two sword tips right now. Very impressive.
but you
Thank
can't,
you.
you can't.
That's right.
Yeah.
And those are balanced on eggs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Randall, I never
Don't
really,
forget the eggs.
I briefly, for about a year and a half, trained in Wing Chun with my teacher's teacher. I was doing Chen Tai Chi. Lee Mancharn, very famous instructor in Montreal at the time, was a high-level Wing Chun guy as well. And we went to see Shaolin monks. And this 85-year-old, Tai Chi Wing Chun master, always polite, never insulting. Shaolin monk comes out and starts balancing himself on his abdomen on a spear. And the two guys come out and spin him. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, and I look at Sifu, and Sifu goes, he needs a spear. So I just that always stuck in my head. Yeah, but he was
That's fantastic.
Awesome.
he brought attention to I forget what the term is, qua maybe it's armpit, and the sort of iron bell between the knees being open, and especially doing standing meditation, that clicked for me. And then I try to bring that all the time. Anytime if I'm dangling and I feel not invigorated, I just kind of flare the armpits a bit, and I find
Yeah.
very Chinese notion. But even in Sanshin, I think a lot of times in that kata, there's an opening and closing of the lateral muscles and the scapula, and that kind of pumps that energy. So my next question I had was on power generation, but I'm going to ask you very specifics because there's so many ways in kicking and throwing. If we are throwing a hand strike, palm strike, punch, basic straight strike, what do you do at this stage in your game? What do you focus on? What are you cultivating to generate power? What's your main focus?
You mind if I take this one first, Randall?
Please.
So we're talking about power. This is one of those things that Chinese martial arts go crazy. They got 10 million labels for all the different kinds of fajin. Some of them are helpful. Most of them are very duplicative, not all that helpful. But I would say for me, there's kind of four main parts to power development practice. One is structure. Um, one of my dragon style teacher says this a lot. He says, if you want your power to be good, you got to have your structure set. You've got your yin elements, your structure, and your yang elements, which is the movement and the momentum, the outward manifestation of the technique. So structure is super important. If you just hit something with your fist, you've got 5 pounds of mass that's involved. But if you get everything behind it, you get credit for all your mass in the force calculation. So it's a wonderful thing to just make sure you get all your structure that you can in whatever thing you're working on. Second one is explosiveness. Just trying to invoke that twitch-like hypnagogic style reflex of movement, not that plodding, but really trying to twitch your power out. The next one is coordinating the whole body in either simultaneously or in a chain reaction, depending on exactly what you're doing, because there's a lot of ways you might want to manifest power. And then the last one is just relaxation. Take the brakes off everything that could be an impediment, right? Any antagonistic muscle groups have to be brought down. So those are the four main parts of any power practice that I'm working on: the structure, the explosiveness, coordinating the body in the right way, and then just being relaxed in all the right places. Um, and that can take place in a lot of different directions. Like Crane, they call those things whipping. And in Five Ancestors, it's the five parts power. It's your limbs connected by your trunk. And in White Eyebrow, it's the power developed like you're stuck with a needle. Like there's all these fun ways of describing it, but ultimately it's always the same. It's all about explosiveness.
Stuck with the needle because that's the speed. Like you're
Like
yeah,
like you got like yeah, that kind of, like, how would you invoke that twitch like muscle movement?
yeah.
I've got one way,
Mm.
right? I could stab you.
Very nice. And
Yeah.
Randall, what are your thoughts on this?
So I had an awful teacher 21 years ago. And you know what's great about having a bad teacher? You can still learn something from them. And I learned a model from this awful teacher. So I've taken this model and I've run with it. And it's very Western. It's not very Chinese. And I've added two things. So here's what I've found. I find that at least the arts that I train have two models of power. It's either whipping, like you've got a towel and you snap somebody on the butt in the locker room. So you've got whipping power, and then you have spiral, or like you were talking about,
Mhm.
coach, which I also refer to as coiling power,
Mhm.
right? So, and he talked about a towel. He's like, towels can have two shapes. You can whip it, it has a shape or a structure. That's the whipping power. Or you can squeeze it and twist it really hard, and it'll stand up just for a little bit. And that's how he looked at how the fascia and the bones play in the body. So to me, Wing Chun, I do two kinds of powers on that one. The other terminologies that I came up with was whole body power and partial body power. And what do I mean by that? So Wing Chun is like an Uzi. It's supposed to be, super quick. This is not the only punch we have, by the way, but it's supposed to be executed very quickly. But the arms are thrown, and the spine and the legs stay upright, right? And then if I make contact, then I can do whole body power, which is once I make contact, I go from whipping to pushing, right? So the arm is independent, freely thrown. You'll see arts like Tongbei do this, which is partial because my body is still in place, so my legs are sitting right now. Or whole body whipping would be the leg and the arm moving simultaneously. The leg could move backwards, the arm can move forward, or they could move in the same direction. But that would be a whole body whipping power to me. Xing Yi is a whole body coiling power art. The body coils at the same time, and then my lower body also coils, but so does my trunk. And it also has a whipping engine too. It's not one or the other. You can kind of dabble between both of these, right? But it is a whole body coiling system, and so is Bagua. And so that's what and again, you're looking for certain positions. There's certain postures that either I'm on or I'm off of my power. It's not quite structurally aligned. So there are certain tips that each of these systems look for to make sure that they're getting the maximum force output. So I'm either looking for a whipping power or a coiling power. But in Wing Chun, I found another one. I'm calling it what would you call it? Forklift power. It's like extension,
Mhm.
right? And it's almost like you're reaching. And I use that one after contact a bit. And you have to have a good ground path to make that one work. But I'm pretty good at upending people. That's probably because I'm short and
Is
pretty
that more
strong
of
too.
it's less explosive, more of a drive, like a pushing?
Yes. So it's expanding. It's an expanding power, right?
What was
So
that
that's
guy's
how,
name? You're going to remember Principles of Effortless Power. Was it Peter Ralston? Do you know him?
power. No,
You got to check this
no.
out. He was like, I forget, like full contact something champion in, I want to say Shanghai or something. Very internal, very eccentric. I think he's still alive. I don't remember. It's,
Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're 100% right because
yeah,
I just listened to him on another podcast.
he spoke about that kind of like that upward iron arm kind of energy.
Mhm.
Let me ask you
Mhm.
both a very specific question. You're going to throw a straight punch. So in my time in training, we had the styles that said, flare the hand energetically open and then close it suddenly, like in Kempo, where it's always oscillating. Then other teachers would say keep it flaccid and close at the last minute. Then others would say keep it lightly closed and fully contract only on impact. And then others would say gloves of steel, always ready, throw, throw, throw. So I know you've all done different styles. You have to throw a straight punch now. Your family's been harmed. You're outmatched. It's the punch of punches. You're going to deliver that punch. What's the state of your hand? Is it always ready, relatively loose? Are you thinking of tightening on impact? Are you just staying clenched? Are you flaring open, then striking? What's your preference, Randall?
I like the egg.
Yeah, always
I've
hold.
always got,
And
yeah,
do
holding
you
the egg.
impact slightly on impact, or is it always?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Russ,
Yeah.
Russ? What's your go-to?
Yeah, my preference for like the ideal situation is a tight fist at the moment of the punch, but I practice a lot of punching with this hand. I mean, hook, pull the guard away,
Yeah.
punch with the knuckles, like don't
Punch.
even involve the fingers, like a lot of everything in between.
Yeah.
But like the ideal state to make the wrist as strong as possible, clenching the fist hard at the point of impact seems to be very, very important.
Tangent. While I have you, Russ, you would know Mark Wiley has a strike with the wrist bone. Is it called? Does he call it an ox jaw when he has stick and he hits with the wrist bone? I think it's.
I don't know what he calls that. I honestly, I don't. I
I'm
don't.
trying to remember because I know it's from his
Yeah.
book on Cabales Eskrima. I've got it
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
in the boxes.
Cool, cool.
All right, everyone. Now we still have lots more to come with Sifu Russ Smith and Coach Randall Davis, but I'm going to cut part one right here, and we're going to be continuing next week with part two of this excellent interview. Thanks all for listening, and until next week, stay safe and stay strong.